I grew up in a Christian home. My father is a pastor. At a young age, I was taught the Bible and, really had the word planted in me, from a very young age. When I was 11 years old, I remember being in a car we were all going out to eat together, me and my family. And this was in the 80s. And I remember hearing a voice that told me to, put on my seatbelt. And I very quickly, I listened to that voice and I put on my seatbelt. And 5 minutes later, we were broadsided. And I broke my hand as a result of that. And I have this bump on my hand. And I always could look to that as I don't know what would have happened if I wouldn't have put my seatbelt on. But I know that God was there in that moment. I started smoking pot, occasionally drinking, also used some LSD at that time. But I think that there were some indications that something wasn't right during that period of time in my life. I was very emotional, very volatile. But as I got older and went to college, the drugs and things like that started escalating. I moved on to much heavier things. And instead of using, marijuana and LSD, I became cocaine, ecstasy, and other things as well. I guess over the next 20 years or so, things just continued to escalate. I was arrested. I ended up having, 2 abortions during this period of time. And I was constantly trying to fill, in AA, they talk about a God-shaped hole, and I feel like that's exactly what I was trying to fill with men, drugs, all sorts of things, and I remember looking to other places too, while I was in the midst of that, trying to find any other answer but Jesus and God. In the back of my mind, there was always a verse that always kind of stuck with me, and it always kind of haunted me in a way. And it was, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." And it would just torment me in a way, because I was looking to all these things and they weren't providing answers, but I wanted them to so bad. I did kind of scrape together my life together back again, but I could never really admit that I had a problem with alcohol. I always thought that I had a problem with drugs. As long as I got rid of specifically meth, I was as long as I don't do meth, I can be okay, right? And that's kind of how it was for 10 years. I ended up just drinking and kind of dabbling with drugs and prescription drugs and things like that. But internally, things were completely wrong. I moved down to Florida in 2015, January 2015, to get sober. I went to Halfway at that point, and it was just amazing. Or I went to treatment, I'm sorry. It was amazing how God just showed up during that period of time. When I was younger, I remember I used to read the story about the Israelites, and when I was a kid, I was like, what's wrong with these people? Don't they see, can't they see God's presence in their life? What's wrong with them? And then I realized now, looking back on that, I'm just like them. I'm just like them. I'm running away from God, and God is showing up in so many miraculous ways in my life, but I choose not to see him. I was choosing not to see that and recognize how much he had done for me. Going back to church was a real difficulty for me. And in fact, it was almost saying the word Jesus would make me cringe almost. So I had a big resentment for whatever reason. And interestingly enough, I ended up wanting to do CrossFit. So I looked around to see what kind of CrossFit gyms, and I was working in property, or in residential property management at the time. And one of the residents that lived at the apartment complex that I was at, I always saw that he wore, CrossFit shirts. Anyway, so I asked him, "What's your favorite gym?" And he's like, "Oh, Hugh." He's like, "But the best one is Hugh Gardens." And I was like, and he's like, "It's in Palm Beach Gardens." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so far away. Why would I ever go to Palm Beach Gardens?" Anyway, I looked on their website, and I think it mentioned God or something like that on there. And anyway, so I decided I was going to go there. I called them. I loved it. Went there, and there's a ton of Christian people that go to Hugh Gardens. And I had met the Cornells and the Shippies, and anyway, at Hugh Gardens. And so I decided to come to Bow Down, and then I just never stopped. I started going to Inner Healing because I just felt like, I've done a lot of work on myself over the last 6.5 years. I've been sober for 6.5 years, done a lot of work, but there's some stuff that I just know that only God can handle. I have a theory. I just feel like addicts and alcoholics are just very sensitive spiritually, and we are completely broken without God. And so when we're separated from God, that's the result, So I just would say cling to God, cling to Jesus, and don't hide. Don't hide. Let someone know what you're struggling with, and people can help you.